The biggest danger of rewards in gamification is that the rewards will actually demotivate. In other words, someone's already motivated to do something, and the reward makes them less likely to do it. How could that be? The basic reason is that rewards acting as extrinsic motivators can crowd out the intrinsic motivation that was already there. You start to focus so much on chasing the reward that you think the reward is the reason to do the activity, and you no longer have the intrinsic motivation to do it that was there before. So the ultimate result is you are less motivated than when you started. This is sometimes also called the overjustification effect. And it's a danger in any kind of system that uses rewards, including systems involving gamification, this substitution effect, that the intrinsic motivation goes away and is replaced by the less effective and problematic extrinsic motivation of the rewards. Now, this may sound counterintuitive, but it's been confirmed by study after study in a wide range of areas. So here's some examples of some of the studies that have shown this demotivating effect. The first one, or set of studies, involves creative activities like drawing. And the experimenters would give a group of kids some paper and pencils and crayons and say, go draw. And some of the kids were more into drawing than others, but some of the kids really loved drawing. They just sat and did it. They drew great pictures, and they did it because they loved doing it. Intrinsic motivation. Then the experimenter gave the kids rewards, said, all right, we're going to give you something for the drawing. And there were a variety of different rewards used. Maybe we'll give you an actual tangible prize for the best drawing. Maybe we'll just give you a gold star. Good job. Maybe we'll just give you a verbal compliment. Well done. That's it. But in each case, the idea was not just draw for its own sake, but draw for some reward. And then, after doing that for a while, the experimenter took the reward away. Now, kids, we're back to where we started. Just go and draw for fun. What happened? Lo and behold, the kids who had been intrinsically motivated, they were going to draw just for the fun of it, once the reward was added and then taken away, were no longer as motivated to draw, and the drawings they came up with just weren't as good because they had substituted that extrinsic motivation of the reward for their intrinsic desire to draw. So this has been replicated across many different kinds of creative or artistic kinds of pursuits, and you can think about this in examples of gamification that involve something creative. This is probably more likely to be in an internal or enterprise case of gamification than some of the more external marketing ones, but it's a real concern in those areas where the goal is to motivate people to innovate and be creative in a business context, and the reward, the gamified system, may actually push away from that. Second study came from Israel, and it has to do with, of all things, daycare pickup. And in this case, the researchers looked at a daycare center where parents had to pick up their kids at a certain time after work. And some of the parents were late, and the daycare center didn't like that. It wasn't fair to them. They had to stick around more. And they thought, well, how do we motivate the parents to come on time? And they thought, all right, we'll use a punishment. Again, punishment is just the flip side of a reward, should work the same way in the opposite direction. We'll charge parents, I don't remember what the number was, but let's say $10 anytime they are more than 5 minutes late picking up their kids. And they thought this would incentivize the parents to come on time. What happened? Parents came even later. Why? Well, we can think about it if we look at what's going on in those parents' minds subconsciously. Before, what was getting them to pick up their kids on time? Social pressure, desire to not inconvenience the workers at the daycare center, and so forth. Now, all of a sudden, this is an economic exchange. It's worth $10 to pick up my kids late. If the thing I've got going on at work or whatever else is happening seems like it's worth more to me than $10, I'll just pay the $10. And all of those intrinsic motivations, caring about the people at the daycare center, caring about their kids getting picked up on time, caring about other parents and so forth, go out the window. It gets replaced by the extrinsic reward. And the effect in that case is people come even later. Similarly, studies of blood donation have found that when encouraging people to donate blood primarily based on civic duty and helping other people and dealing with disasters and so forth is replaced by primarily paying people to give blood, people are less likely to give blood. It crowds out that intrinsic motivation. Final set of studies, and these are somewhat controversial, suggest that teacher merit pay, paying teachers based on the results of the kids in their classes, don't actually produce better results. For the same reason, they tend to crowd out the intrinsic reasons for teaching well and turn it into purely a calculus about how to get the desired results for the reward. So all of these kinds of studies suggest that there's a danger in rewards that will actually make people less motivated to do the task and thus produce worse results than intended. A couple other aspects to these findings that are worth highlighting. The first is these studies are generally limited to what are called interesting tasks, i.e. tasks that require some creativity that people have some reason to want to do. No task is inherently interesting, and no task is inherently boring. So I might not really want to stamp out things on an assembly line all day long, but someone else might find that challenging to get it right every single time. That being said, there are certainly tasks that are more interesting, generally speaking, for most people than others. Tasks that require some creativity, that require some thought or problem solving or some ability. Those tend to be tasks that most people think of as interesting. And so the studies about overjustification focus on tasks that start off with some level of intrinsic motivation. They're tasks that were interesting to begin with, at least on some level, and the rewards seem to make them less interesting. Second thing here is that the types of rewards do matter. So I described a number of different categories of rewards, and the overjustification effect, the demotivating effect, is more true with some rewards than others. So, for example, tangible rewards tend to be where the largest demotivating effects happen, because those are things that are purely substituting something extrinsic, something external to the activity for the intrinsic motivation that's there. Tangible rewards are the ones that you might think are the best possible rewards, right? We'll give you a bonus or some thing of value in return for this activity. Those are at the greatest risk of substituting for the intrinsic motivation. Conversely, if the reward is unexpected, if it's that surprise reward, hey, guess what? We just decided to give you a bonus for your good performance, that doesn't have as much of an effect on intrinsic motivation because it didn't crowd out. When the person was doing the thing, they were doing it for the intrinsic reason, and they were surprised by the reward. So random or chance rewards that come about without expectation don't tend to have as much of this kind of problem. And finally, the other one that's interesting to talk about, performance contingent rewards. So remember, these are the rewards that are based on achievement, actually doing something effectively in the task, can go both ways. If the reward is simply saying the whole point is the end point, the goal, as opposed to doing well, and the person tends to take away from that this is really not about me and my accomplishment, but this is about some external thing, the performance level, then they're demotivating. On the other hand, if the reward is seen as purely informational, it's saying, you did a good job. This is recognizing the fact that you achieved something. Your performance was great. It's all about your performance. The reward is just a marker of what you did. Then we don't see the same effect. Then there's not the demotivation. And this comes from a variety of papers by Ed Desi and Rich Ryan and their co-authors, who we're going to meet in more detail in the next segment on self-determination theory. This is one in which they did a meta-analysis of over 100 different papers on effects of rewards, and these were some of the effects that they found on different categories of rewards. So to dig into more of why this happens and to cut it back to gamification, we need to focus on the underlying theory that explains why certain kinds of intrinsic motivators work and explains what kinds of things actually lead to intrinsic motivation.